4 years of relentless fighting, with the world's greatest powers locked in conflict during World War I, a sudden silence fell over the battlefield, marking the end of the chaos. That's the very hour when the Armistice of 1918 came to happen, a ceasefire that ended the deadliest conflict the world had ever seen. Today, on the 11th day of the 11th month, we reflect on how this pivotal moment reshaped the world, ended the chaos of war, and left a lasting legacy that still impacts us today. To truly understand the impact of the Armistice, let's first take a close look at what was happening during World War I. For over 4 long years of chaos from 1914 to 1918, soldiers endured a hellscape few could have imagined. Day after day, they were surrounded by walls of barbed wire, while above them, artillery fire painted the sky with smoke. Life on the front lines was brutal, with the terror of poison gas drifting over fields and new, horrific technology redefining warfare. The Western Front saw no clear victor, just a grim, relentless stalemate where tens of thousands perished each week. The ground was stained red, and there seemed to be no end in sight. Meanwhile, billions of dollars were spent on weapons, food, and supplies, draining entire nations and pushing them toward financial collapse. The impact was felt far beyond the front lines. Civilians at home faced rationing and shortages, struggling to keep up with the war's demands. The conflict wasn't just changing the battlefield, it was transforming societies and shaking everyday life for people everywhere. For the Central Powers, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire, war was taking a serious toll. Their soldiers were worn thin. Supplies were nearly gone, and food was rationed down to mere crumbs. Civilians felt not only the bite of hunger, but also rising frustration. Ethnic groups began pushing back from Austria-Hungary and the Ottoman Empire, demanding independence and sparking chaos from within. And as the war went on, morale gradually lost. Each passing month, the hope for victory felt more like a cruel joke. Social unrest became a real threat, as people within these empires questioned the purpose of continuing the war. The once mighty Central Powers were starting to fall apart, and the end of the conflict seemed nowhere in sight. As the Central Powers crumbled under the weight of exhaustion and internal strife, a new force arrived on the scene to shift the balance of power. In 1917, fresh American troops started pouring into Europe. For the Allies, Britain, France, and now the US, this was a game changer. The Americans came in large numbers, bringing much-needed supplies and an energy that revitalized the tired Allied forces. The US didn't just send soldiers, they brought financial strength too. American factories churned out food, weapons, and materials, giving the Allies a crucial advantage. More than 1 million American soldiers arrived, lifting morale and shifting the momentum toward the Allies. Meanwhile, the Central Powers were running out of everything: soldiers, supplies, and hope. With each new American battalion joining the fight, the Allies gained more strength while the Central Powers grew weaker. This surge of reinforcements was critical. The fresh American troops allowed the Allies to maintain pressure on the Central Powers without tiring as quickly, gradually wearing down their opponents through sheer numbers and resources. These American soldiers, nicknamed doughboys, were younger and less battle-worn than their European counterparts, bringing a burst of optimism and energy to a war-weary front. As the Allies gained strength and momentum, the Central Powers found themselves increasingly cornered, their resources and resolve running out. By 1918, the weight of exhaustion, internal turmoil, and mounting defeats would push them to the brink of surrender. German soldiers, defeated and demoralized, were retreating. Military commanders faced growing resistance, with soldiers often refusing to fight, a clear sign that discipline had broken down. In France, Germany was losing ground rapidly, while Austria-Hungary was crumbling from within, and the Ottoman Empire was losing territory in the Middle East. Soldiers were demoralized, and civilians called for an end to the violence. With no allies to turn to and no resources to spare, surrender became the only option. The war had claimed over 8 million lives, drained entire treasuries, and left countries teetering on the brink of economic ruin. The cost of continuing the fight was simply too high. Then, in a stunning turn of events, the German Kaiser stepped down in November, and a new government, the Weimar Republic, took charge. The once mighty German Empire was defeated, and the world was about to witness a historic surrender. As the Central Powers crumbled and the decision to surrender loomed, the world was on the edge of a new chapter. The moment of reckoning would come not with another battle, but with a silence that would echo across Europe forever. At the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, in the year 1918, the guns finally fell silent. The armistice was signed in a train car in Compiègne, France. Germany was ordered to pull back from all occupied lands, surrender its weapons, and allow the Allies to take control. The trenches, once filled with the echoes of gunfire, now held an eerie quiet. Soldiers on both sides, worn and weary, paused, reflecting on a peace that had come at an unimaginable cost. Over 15 million lives lost, countless cities destroyed, and a world forever scarred. The armistice wasn't a final peace. It was a temporary ceasefire. But it was a crucial moment, a collective sigh of relief for those who had survived. Across Europe, celebrations erupted, but the weight of the cost was impossible to ignore. Nearly 10 million soldiers and 7 million civilians had perished, leaving families and entire communities forever changed. As the guns fell silent and Europe took its first breath of peace, the true cost of the war began to settle in. The armistice may have ended the fighting, but its consequences were just beginning to unfold. Shortly after, the Treaty of Versailles was signed, imposing harsh penalties on Germany that would eventually contribute to the outbreak of another war. The once great empires, Austro-Hungarian, Ottoman, and Russian, were dismantled, giving rise to new nations that would spend the next century struggling with borders, ethnic identities, and the legacies of old powers. The new borders drawn after World War I left millions of people as minorities in foreign lands, sparking tensions that would simmer for decades. The war had demonstrated the terrifying power of modern technology, making future conflicts seem even more dangerous and destructive. In an effort to prevent another war, the League of Nations was formed, but its influence proved weak. The armistice of 1918 was more than just the end of fighting. It was a sobering reminder of the true cost of war and the long-lasting consequences of unresolved conflict. This uneasy peace set the stage for the global struggles that would define the 20th century. Today, as we look back at this pivotal moment, we are reminded of the need for global unity, diplomacy, and the courage to choose peace over violence. Just as the world moved forward after the armistice, we too must strive to build a future where peace is the ultimate victor. What do you think? Did the armistice truly bring peace, or just a pause? Let's keep the conversation going in the comment section. Thanks for tuning in to our journey through the past. If you enjoyed exploring history with us, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. What historical events do you want us to dive into next? Keep exploring and catch us next time for more eventful insights.